talking a week in review from a news standpoint now with Chris Graham of the Augusta Free Press. And Chris, lots going on. General Assembly will start next Wednesday. We'll talk about that in just a couple of seconds. But you also had mentioned to me before we started this interview today that Larry Sabato recently weighed in on upcoming races here in Virginia, the Senate races. Still there?
Still here, yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. If you want to just give a comment on that Larry Sabato thing?
Yes, well, Larry Sabato, his crystal ball report this week was focusing on Senate races across the country in 2012. You know, we're barely even started with the congressional session in 2011 and we're already looking ahead, but that's the nature of American politics and punditry in American politics. And of course, among those in 2012, I think maybe one of the marquee races in 2012 will be the Jim Webb race. We'll say Jim Webb race. We're not sure if Jim Webb's going to run, but Jim Webb against somebody, or Tim Kaine maybe against somebody on the Republican side, and whoever it is, the combinations of potential candidates are going against each other. Therein, Larry Sabato is rating this race a toss-up race, which is interesting. Of course, Virginia has gone back and forth. The pendulum's been swinging politically the last few cycles. Jim Webb won this seat back in 2006, upsetting George Allen in a pretty close race. In 2008, Mark Warner, a Democrat, winning handily over former Governor Jim Gilmore in a Senate race, and of course Barack Obama winning Virginia's electoral votes, the first Democrat to win the presidential electoral votes in Virginia since 1964. But then, of course, since then, we've seen Bob McDonnell lead a sweep of the statewide races in 2009, and we saw Republican congressional candidates win pretty handily in 2010 in Virginia. So that leads us to where we are now, which is Larry Sabato saying that whether Jim Webb runs or Tim Kaine runs or some other Democrat runs against maybe George Allen on the Republican side or Bob Marshall possibly, or whoever we'll see on that Republican side, it'll be a toss-up race. So what we'll see then is, I would expect, a toss-up race for Senate and probably a really competitive race for the presidential, between Barack Obama and whoever gets the nomination on the Republican side there. It'll be a pretty interesting year in Virginia politics in 2012.
And even 2011, I guess, coming up in November, I believe every seat in the General Assembly is up for grabs. You wonder how that's going to impact the upcoming session, which will start next Wednesday.
Yeah, because, it's not like Democrats are going to have much chance or much hope even of taking the House of Delegates. Republicans have over 60 seats in the House of Delegates. Democrats would have to sweep a number of seats in competitive districts to be able to have a competition there in that House of Delegates. But in the state Senate, it's kind of weird. We have in Virginia, we have a big majority for the Republicans in the House, but we have a small but maybe healthy majority for Democrats in the state Senate. And, it's partly because the state Senate's only elected every 4 years. All 40 seats are elected every 4 years. So the last election was in 2007, back during that time when Democrats were in ascendancy in Virginia politics. So here 2011 comes, we have a Democrat majority in the state Senate, and I think we're going to see Republicans really going, all out to take back a few seats. I think the majority right now is 22-18, so they don't have to take two back, really, because they have a Republican lieutenant governor who can vote to break ties. To be able to take effective control back of the state Senate, but I think they'll set their sights higher than that just to give themselves a cushion. So yeah, that's going to have an impact on how things go in this General Assembly session because everything's going to be tinged with, hey, there's an election coming up in a few months.
And needless to say, it looks like money will be the central theme of this 2011 session. The budget, how to pay for transportation improvements, you name it.
Yeah, and that privatization of ABC stores issue, which isn't just an isolated issue. I know Bob McDonnell has tried a variety of tactics to get support for that proposal that he's thrown out there, which is to privatize state ABC stores, have that state money that would come in for selling the rights to private companies to sell liquors in Virginia, and then use that money for transportation. Because of that tie to the transportation funding, then it ties into that issue, and Democrats have been really critical of Bob McDonnell on transportation because a couple of key planks that he ran on in 2009 for funding for transportation, one, the privatization of ABC stores, doesn't even seem to have a lot of Republican support in the General Assembly. So there's something that's going to be a huge gap maybe for him to make up funding wise. And then also the moratorium on offshore drilling. There was a proposal from the governor to use money from offshore drilling, the sale of leases for offshore drilling, to go towards transportation. Democrats and Creeds had said at the time that was sort of a pie-in-the-sky idea, that there would actually be any monies ever to go to transportation in Virginia anytime soon anyway, because the sale of those leases was so far off in the future. Well, now with the moratorium, I think it's until 2017, in the wake of the disaster in the Gulf last year, that's off in the future. So now we're back to square one. How do we get money for transportation? We have all these needs across the state. We have them here in our backyard. Interstate 81 has been long on the list for potential improvements. Maybe the addition of a third lane up and down the highway. Some spot improvements that maybe would do some other things in certain areas. Certainly in the Rockbridge and Augusta areas, I think we see a lot of those kind of issues with congestion and things like that with the I-81, I-64 interchanges that are in our areas here. But then Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, the Richmond area have their own issues as well. So we have a lot of transportation needs, and it's not just, hey, can we get there quicker? It's about the economy. If we can't move commerce more quickly, if we can't open up that port in Norfolk, if we can't keep Northern Virginia efficient, then maybe we lose business in the future, and then we lose tax dollars. So this is a very fundamental kind of issue for us to get into, and it's not going to be easily solved without all these discussions about all these side issues, trying to figure out a way to get money to solve all the problems.
Even Creed told us this week another big issue, not during the session coming up in the next couple of months, but I guess later in the spring is that special session that he anticipates for redistricting. It's almost time to redistrict again.
Oh yeah, and of course, what we talked about in the beginning of this segment about the elections coming up. We can't have elections until we redistrict. We can't, as a result, necessarily have candidates even announcing. Without with any formality until we have redistricting. It's not. I don't know that we anticipate that districts will change that dramatically because the state is pretty much what it is. But that said, we have to redistrict, and with Republicans in control of the House of Delegates and the governor's office, and then Democrats in control of the state Senate, it'll be a more bipartisan process than we've seen in recent, decennials, I guess we could say. In 2000, for example, Republicans had control across the board. In 1990, Democrats had control across the board. So those processes were largely dictated by the party caucuses. This time it's got to have a little bit more interplay. So that will be interesting. I wonder, just how that will turn out, because we haven't really had a lot of experience here in Virginia with bipartisan redistricting, which is something, of course, that Creed Dietz has really long pushed for from his perspective as a House Delegates member and a state senator. And when he ran for governor, he pushed that big issue too. I don't know that we'll see effective bipartisan redistricting. I think what we'll see is both parties trying to protect certain seats and maybe a little bit of give and play there as far as that goes. But yeah, that has to be resolved before we can have elections in November.
Okay, Chris, what do we look for in the coming days from the news from the Augusta Free Press?
Well, getting ready for the General Assembly session. We'll see what else pops up in terms of, last minute proposals. I guess I'm getting a flurry of them coming in as from legislators across the state and from the governor's office, lieutenant governor, attorney general. As we get ready for that session, we're hearing more and more about the legislative priorities of all the big players on both sides of the aisle, and so we'll be focusing on that the next few days as things roll on. Also, we're also starting to see some activity, at least up here in Augusta County, in the local races. I know all of our members of the Board of Supervisors, all 7 seats on that Board of Supervisors, are up for election. We have our first announcement coming up this weekend from a candidate as far as running for one of the seats in that election. So really government focused, and we'll see what else pops up.
Okay, Chris Graham with the Augusta Free Press with his update. Again, General Assembly session gets underway next Wednesday from Richmond. We will come back for more of Online here on Fast and Country AM 1450 right after this.